Hello friends, welcome back to the channel. Today we are continuing on with Codominance by CurlyStar09, and we are doing chapters 17 and 18 today. Chapter 17, Sent Away. Bakugou barged into the Hero Commission, trying his hardest not to go on a rampage as soon as he made it into the building. He had dropped Akio off with Tetsu and Fat Gum before heading over. He tried calling Kirishima a couple of times on the way, but was sent directly to voicemail every fucking time. "Where the fuck is my partner?" he spits out through his teeth at the person at the front desk, his hands grabbing at the desk tightly as he tried not to explode it to high hell. The young woman stumbled as she looked around. "Where the fuck is Red Riot?" he repeated himself. "If you could follow me, Mr. Dynamite," a voice said from the side. Bakugou turned with a glare, finding a man in a suit a couple of feet away by an elevator, hands behind his back. "Where is he?" Bakugou snarled. The man didn't answer. Instead, he called for the elevator, the door opening immediately. He gestured for Bakugou to get in. Bakugou cursed under his breath, but he had no other choice than to walk into the elevator. Bakugou stood close to the back of the elevator, watching as the man entered after him, and pressed one of the buttons for one of the highest floors. They rode in silence as the shitty elevator music played, and Bakugou tried to take a couple of deep breaths as he tried not to beat the answer out of the fucking bastard next to him. After what felt like an eternity, the elevator dinged and the door opened to reveal a large open space, windows making up the walls. A long table opposite the elevator was set up for a meeting, and Kirishima was sitting there with Sato. "Hey," Bakugou said. Relief cleared in his voice as he rushed forward towards Kirishima. "Cats," Kirishima said, standing to meet him halfway. Bakugou's hands cupped Kirishima's face as if checking if he was all right before nodding satisfied. "Where's Akio?" Kirishima asked in a whisper as he leaned their foreheads together. "He's safe," Bakugou answered, aware that there were other people in the room. Kirishima nodded against him, opening his mouth to say something, but was interrupted. "Thank you for joining us," Sato said as she watched them carefully from her place at the head of the table. "What the fuck is this stunt about?" Bakugou growled as he pulled away from Kirishima to glare at her. "Wanted to get your attention, and it seems to have worked," Sato said, unamused, as she flipped through some papers in front of her, not even giving them her full attention. "You were told that the child's health exams were to be conducted here, and you broke that agreement. And I explained that it was an emergency." Kirishima spat at her, his hand finding Bakugou's hand and squeezing it tight. Something was wrong. Bakugou could feel it, and he didn't even let it show on his face. "Either way, I want to make it perfectly clear," Sato said, placing her elbows on the table and lacing her fingers together as she looked at them over her hands. "You make one false move that reveals the true origin of the clone, and we will make sure that the story gets buried. All of it." "You would fucking dare, Katsuki!" Kirishima cut him off, making the blonde turn towards his partner with wide eyes. "She agreed to let us take him to whatever doctor we want." Bakugou's eyes narrowed at Kirishima's words. "What the hell did you get in return?" Bakugou said to Sato, who looked very satisfied with herself. "Just the two of you to do your jobs to the best of your ability," Sato said with a shrug before pushing herself up onto her feet. "Red Riot is scheduled for a long-term mission tomorrow. That seems the best place to start." Bakugou felt his blood grow cold. "We'll talk about it when we get home," Kirishima whispered. "Can we go now?" Kirishima asked Sato. "Just don't ever hang up on me again," she said with a chilling smile before waving a hand at them, as if dismissing them. Time passes. Bakugou and Kirishima were quiet on their way out as they were escorted by the man that had taken the elevator up with Bakugou. Kirishima was trying to think of how to explain what had happened to Bakugou and how to lessen the blow that was coming. It was just their luck, having figured out their feelings for each other just for something like this to happen. They got to Bakugou's car, sitting in silence for a couple of minutes before Bakugou let out a sigh. Talk already. What the fuck happened? She threatened Akio, Kirishima said, but continued quickly. Not directly, but she implied that she would not let him be unless we play her game. I will go fucking kill her right now. Katsuki, Kirishima said, reaching over for the blonde's hand. Do you know what her quirk is? Bakugou froze. He was supposed to get the information from Aizawa, but their former sensei had not been able to find anything. Everything about Sato was classified to an extent that was hard to break. What is it? Bakugou asked. Time suspension, Kirishima told him. She can stop time for multiple people at a time with just a look. What the fuck type quirk is that? Bakugou growled. One that she made clear would make it easy for her to take Akio and leave without a trace. Kirishima's voice shook slightly, eyes on his lap. She used it on you, didn't she? Bakugou asked, but he knew the answer already. Yeah, Kirishima said with a nod, turning to look at Bakugou. I was aware, but I couldn't move. My brain was sluggish. I don't know how we would be able to stop her if... We'll find a way, Bakugou assured him. For now, we just need to play her fucking game, as you said. She is sending me on a mission, Kirishima explained. First thing tomorrow morning. Didn't even give me a timeline or any clue how long it would be. She can't fucking do that. But she can, Katz. She already did. Kirishima yelled, desperation clear in his voice. Eijirou. Bakugou tried, reaching over to cup Kirishima's face. Look at me, love, he said softly, as he turned Kirishima's face gently so their eyes would meet. Kirishima's eyes were filled with tears that made Bakugou's chest ache. You are going to go and kick some fucking ass and come back home to me and Akio in one fucking piece, yeah? Kirishima nodded, one of his hands covering Bakugou's. How long are they going to be watching us? I don't know, Bakugou admitted, but we're unstoppable together, right? Kirishima nodded, a tiny smile pulling at his lips. I want you and Akio to stay somewhere else while I'm gone. You think I can't defend myself and my kid? Bakugou huffed, but his tone was a bit playful. I know you can. I just don't trust them to play fair, Kirishima admitted. Bakugou let out a sigh before leaning over and kissing a trail a tear had left behind on Kirishima's cheek. We can talk about it later tonight, all right? For now, let's go home. Kirishima nodded, leaning over to kiss Bakugou once. A quick, soft kiss. Let's go home. Time passes. Are we picking up Akio? Kirishima asked after a couple minutes of driving in silence. Yeah, Bakugou told him. Fat Gum took him back to his place, since there were a lot of eyes at the agency. Tin Can is there with them as well, I believe. Kirishima nodded, part of him hating the fact that he wished he could go and get some alone time with Bakugou right now. Just a couple of hours, so they could talk about everything going on. He didn't want to talk about the situation they were in front of Akio. Their little boy was so smart, and Kirishima believed that he understood a lot more than most babies his age. It will be all right, Bakugou told him. Thanks, sweetheart, Kirishima said with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Don't fucking thank me for stating a fact, Bakugou huffed. That made Kirishima chuckle. Fine, I take it back then. You fucking better. They were quiet for a bit before Kirishima spoke up once more. If you don't want to stay somewhere else while I'm out, how about having someone stay with you? They could use my room, and it would be just so that I know you two aren't alone. Bakugou thought about it for a moment. All right, but just for the night. I don't need any kind of idiots being in our house the whole fucking day. Of course not, Kirishima said with a smile. Thanks, Kat. Love you, Red. Love you more, sweetheart. Time passes. Akio greeted them with excitement when they arrived at Fakum's place. Hey, little pebble, Kirishima said with a smile as he pulled Akio close to him, breathing in a smell of his sun, letting it wash over him and relax him. Are you too hungry? I made dinner, Fatgum offered, pointing towards his kitchen that looked overfilled with freshly made food. Tetsu is staying. Sounds good, Bakugou answered with a shrug before Kirishima could reject the offer. That way I don't have to cook. We can't stay long, though, Kirishima said, looking at Bakugou cautiously. The blonde usually didn't want to stay for dinner at anyone's place. Bakugou turned to look at him. We need to tell them, eh? Kirishima swallowed before nodding. Tell us what, bro? Tetsu asked from the kitchen, already holding a plate overfilled with food. I'm going on a mission tomorrow, Kirishima said, eyes on the floor as Akio pulled at his hair playfully. Since when? Fatgum asked, eyebrow pulling up. Since the Hero Commission decided he needed to go, Bakugou grumbled as he made his way to the kitchen. Kirishima gave Fat a shrug as they stood together by the door. They can't do that, Fatgum tells them. They already did, Kirishima said with a sigh, kissing Akio. He was going to miss his kid. Well, yeah, but you are already assigned to another mission, Fatgum told them. Kirishima and Bakugou froze, turning to look at Fatgum with wide eyes. Did you guys forget? Riot submitted the paperwork to work on Akio's case the other day. It was already finalized today. According to the HC themselves, heroes can only be on one long-term mission at a time. Which means I can't go, Kirishima realized, eyes wide. They found a way out. You have to go, Bakugou told him, face serious. What do you mean I have to go? Kirishima asked him. We found a way for me to stay, and now you want me to go? He stepped over to Bakugou, unsure what the blonde was getting at. Hey, listen to me, Bakugou told him, his voice softer than before. I don't want you to go, but if you do, we can get the HC for breaking their own rules. Kirishima could see that Bakugou already had a plan brewing. It was clear in his eyes that he was working on something a mile a second inside his head. We'll talk about it when we get home, Kirishima told him firmly. We'll talk about it, Bakugou promised. Are you all going to eat or not? Tetsu asked the group. We're coming, Kirishima said with a sigh. Time passes. The couple got home a couple of hours later. Bakugou placed Akio in his playpen as soon as they walked into the house, then pulled Kirishima towards the sofa with him. Kirishima sat down with a heavy sigh but felt himself relax as Bakugou sat next to him, wrapping himself around the redhead. I don't want you to leave, he admitted against Kirishima's neck. Then why are you telling me to? Kirishima asked as he tightened his arm around Bakugou. Because they are doing this as a punishment. They will think it's working, but they'll be the ones that gave you those orders. So it will look like they knew and still broke protocol, Kirishima finished with a small gasp. Exactly, Bakugou said with a smile. As soon as you leave, we can get Fat to submit a complaint. But that would mean I would be away for a couple days, a week even, Kirishima told him. I know, Bakugou said, his grip tightening around his partner's. Kirishima didn't say a word, kissing the top of Bakugou's head before pulling Bakugou further into his lap. Bakugou didn't complain, adjusting himself slightly to kiss Kirishima on the lips once, then twice. You better rush back to us as soon as they tell you can come back. Bakugou said it as a threat, but he punctuated each word with a kiss somewhere on Kirishima's face. His cheeks, his jaw, on his scar, and ending back at his lips with crushing force. No excuses, Red. Would never dream of it, Cats, Kirishima told him, lifting a hand to cuff Bakugou's face. Bakugou leaned into the touch, closing his eyes. What's a couple more days after 10 years, I guess, Bakugou said with a sigh. Too long, Kirishima whispered before pulling Bakugou down for a long, lingering kiss. Da! Akio exclaimed from his playpen. Da! 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 Bakugou pulled away from Kirishima with a groan. The gremlin wants attention. Kirishima let out a laugh, kissing Bakugou once more before letting the blonde pull away to get Akio. We really need to find some time for ourselves, Kirishima hummed as Bakugou picked up Akio and carried him back to the sofa. Maybe when you get back, Bakugou told him as he sat next to Kirishima once more. We can leave this one with a babysitter. Sounds like an amazing idea, Kirishima grinned. Akio letting out a string of babbles that sounded annoyed, making both of his dads laugh. Okay, maybe not right away, Bakugou chuckled as he leaned into Kirishima. I love you, both of you, Kirishima said as he kissed Akio's cheek and then Bakugou's temple. He better, right, gremlin? Akio smiled at them brightly, shaking his fist as he babbled to them again. Time passes. Kirishima woke up early the next morning to his alarm with a groan. His arm that was wrapped around Bakugou's waist pulled his partner closer as he hid his face between broad shoulder blades. He didn't want to leave, hated the very thought of it. He felt Bakugou shift in his sleep. Go back to sleep, sweetheart, Kirishima whispered as he placed a kiss on Bakugou's back. You have to leave soon, love, Bakugou said as he turned around in Kirishima's arms. I want to say goodbye before you go. Kirishima smiled. Maybe some breakfast too? Bakugou snorted. Fine, but you better be fucking ready to go by then. Wait, that means you have to leave the bed, Kirishima said with a pout. Bakugou leaned into Kirishima, kissing him slowly, as if trying to push away the sleep with the redhead's lips. We both do, Kirishima groaned. Fine, but I want some bacon. Bakugou laughed as he stood up, both of them not wanting to acknowledge that in a couple of hours they would be separated for days. They both pretended as if it was a regular morning because they needed it to be. Akio was in his high chair, still in his pajamas, when Kirishima walked into the kitchen. Good morning, little pebble, he greeted and got a bright smile in return before he kissed the baby's forehead. Food's ready, babe, Bakugou told him, setting down a plate on the table for Kirishima. Kirishima grinned at the omelet and bacon that filled his plate. Thank you, sweetheart, Kirishima said, an arm on Bakugou's waist before kissing his partner. You're welcome, love, Bakugou hummed back. They sat next to each other to have breakfast. It wasn't until they were almost halfway done when Kirishima spoke up. I'm going to text the group chat and see who would be able to sleep over tonight. I don't need one of the idiots to come help, eh? Bakugou said with an eye roll. I know, Kirishima assured him. It would just give me peace of mind. Bakugou let out a dramatic sigh. Fine, but you better fucking make it up to me. I will if you watch your language while I'm gone, Kirishima teased. Bakugou rolled his eyes, but a smile pulled at the corner of his lips. Time passes. They cleaned the kitchen together, both dragging it out to spend more time together than what they had left. Kirishima had packed the night before, and his suitcase was already by the door. They were just dragging it out before Kirishima had to officially leave. I have to go, Kirishima said with a sigh as he looked at the clock. I know, Bakugou told him with a sigh. I'll be back as soon as I can, Kirishima promised. Bakugou nodded. I'll talk to Fat. Make sure he sends the notice in 2 days. All right, Kirishima nodded, kissing Bakugou softly. Bakugou's hands grabbed fistfuls of Kirishima's shirt, refusing to let him pull away. I love you, Bakugou whispered against Kirishima's lips. I love you too, Kirishima responded. I'll be back before you know it. Bakugou let go, picking up Akio before following Kirishima to the door. You are going to miss his first day of daycare, Bakugou told him. I know. Send me pictures, okay? I will. Take care of your dad, Akio, Kirishima said as he kissed the little boy goodbye. I'm in good hands then, Bakugou declared before turning to look at his partner's face. I'll see you soon, Kirishima said before kissing Bakugou once more. See you soon, Bakugou repeated as he watched Kirishima walk out the door with his suitcase, a feeling of dread and anxious energy settling in the pit of his stomach as the door closed behind the man he loves. Chapter 18. Auntie Mina Stays the Night. Bakugou kept looking at his phone. Kirishima had promised to let him know when he had arrived to wherever the fuck they had sent him. All he knew was that the mission was in the middle of nowhere. He had been trying to work all morning since Kirishima had walked out the door, but all he found himself doing was staring at his computer screen until Akio got his attention when he needed something. He was slowly going insane. He knew their plan would work, had to, unless the Hero Commission wanted to look like idiotic bastards that couldn't follow their own rules. If everything went as planned, they would be together again in a couple of days. No big deal. Yet, Bakugou knew way too well how common it was for a mission to go downhill in a matter of seconds. He couldn't shake the feeling that Sato sent Kirishima on this very mission for some fucked up reason. There was a knock on the door that pulled Bakugou's attention away from his spiraling thoughts. He stood up, glancing over at Akio, who was playing in his playpen while Riot lay nearby watching him. If that was the Hero Commission, he should be able to sprint back to the living room and grab his son before they could move if he used a big enough explosion to daze them. He flexed one of his hands, hoping there was enough sweat just in case he needed it. He opened the door a crack at first and then groaned in annoyance when he saw who was on the other side. I thought I fucking told you to call or something before you showed up, Bakugou huffed as he swung the door open. Deku stood there smiling awkwardly. Sorry, Kachan, I just needed to talk to you and came without thinking. Fucking shit, Deku, I was about to explode you into next week. Bakugou moved out of the way for Deku to step inside the house, closing it as soon as he was inside. I also wanted to ask, why did Kirishima leave on a mission? Deku asked as he made his way further into the house with Bakugou. Short version, the Hero Commission got pissed off at us. Long version, there's this bitch that is trying to put us in our place or something, but it's going to backfire, Bakugou told him, but he couldn't help but frown. They didn't know if their plan would work just yet. Oh, okay, so there is no reason for me to go into this whole 2 missions aren't allowed rant, Deku said with a thoughtful hum. Did you think he had chosen to go on another mission on his own? Bakugou glared. Of course not. That's why I thought it was so weird, Midoriya defended himself. Hey, Akio, he exclaimed as soon as he saw the baby, almost sounding relieved for the change of topic. Is it okay if I pick him up? Sure, Bakugou said with a sigh as he let himself fall onto the sofa. Midoriya approached Akio with a smile, picking him up from his playpen. Akio stared at Midoriya for a good 2 seconds after being picked up before he started screaming and crying at full volume, struggling against Deku as if trying to get away. I'm sorry, what's wrong? Deku asked, looking over at Bakugou in a panic. Here, Bakugou said, already reaching over for Akio. What's wrong, Kremlin? You hadn't done this in a while, he said softly as he held Akio, brushing away the tears from tear-stained cheeks. Akio sniffed a bit, calming down as soon as he was with his dad once more. One of his little hands formed a fist around Bakugou's shirt, refusing to let go as he tried to hide from Midoriya's view. Sorry for making you cry, Midoriya told Akio as he sat down nearby, but a good distance away, as if he was nervous about making the baby cry once more. You better be, Bakugou mumbled before letting out a sigh. So, any other reason you're here? Oh, Deku exclaimed as he reached into his pocket, pulling out one of his notebooks. I narrowed down the list of possible locations, he announced with a grin. Why didn't you fucking start with that? Bakugou told him as he sat up a bit more, eyes already trying to see what the nerd had written down. Should you be cussing in front of the baby? Midoriya asked nervously. Bakugou blinked, eyes falling onto Akio, who was curled up against him, before turning to look at Midoriya with a menacing look, as menacing as he could muster. If you tell Eijirou about it, you're dead. Deku raised his hands as if trying to show he meant no harm, holding back a laugh before returning to his notes. Okay, so a lot of the machines they needed to run their experiments are very hard to get. Not only expensive, but hard to order if it isn't from an actual medical institution. I looked more into the background of the villains we found with Akio, and it turns out she worked in hospitals until she quit some years ago to start working on her skip to the end, nerd, Bakugou told him, already knowing most of this from the notes and files he had read. Oh, yeah, so she pretty much stopped working in hospitals according to the records, but I believe there was still a hospital she was using for research. That's the only explanation for the experiment they used and why they didn't find any of it during the raid. They were probably using fake IDs or something to get to the hospitals, or even a hospital as a front. We find the hospital, we find the rest of them, Bakugou finished, already looking at the list that Midoriya had opened his notebook to. Exactly. I have a list of all the hospitals with the specific equipment they would need to do all of this listed here, Deku explained. How do we narrow it down? Bakugou asked, tightening his hold slightly on Akio, who was hiding his face against his chest, still sniffing slightly. I guess it would require requesting access to the hospital employee records and going from there, Deku said with a slight frown. The list was about 100 hospitals, narrowed down as much as possible by the equipment, distance, and other factors. It would still take a long time for them to find a lead. We need to interrogate them, don't we? Both the villains and some of the hospital staff? Bakugou groaned. More than likely, Deku told him with a nod. Let's start on Monday. I should be back to the agency by then, Bakugou told him, adjusting Akio in his arms to make him sit facing forward. As soon as Akio saw Midoriya once more, he started whimpering. What did you do to him to make him react like this? Bakugou glared at Deku. Deku was wide-eyed as he tried to fumble through an explanation he didn't have. I don't know. I haven't seen him since... Oh. Midoriya stopped at the realization that hit him. I hadn't seen him since the raid. So the last time he saw you, you were beating up the only caretaker he had ever known. Bakugou finished when he realized what Midoriya was getting at. It's only natural for him to be scared of me, Deku said with a sad smile. Bakugou let out a sigh. He'll warm up to you. He was like this when he met the others at first, Bakugou assured him. Well, if you warmed up to me, I guess it's possible for anyone to do so, Deku said, holding back a laugh. Get the fuck out of my house, Bakugou told him, pointing at the front door. Kat-chan, I'm going to tell Kirishima you said that, Deku exclaimed as he tried to act shocked at the language. You little... In front of Akio? The horror, Deku gasped. I will kill you, Bakugou threatened, but he couldn't help a small laugh. Time passes. Kirishima arrived at the hideout around 2 in the afternoon. It was a longer trip than he had expected, and part of him suspected that they had tried to disorient him during the plane ride. The place was very basic, a small house with 2 bedrooms and minimal furniture. It was very similar to a lot of the other hideouts he had stayed in when on other missions. At least that was a green flag that this was maybe an actual mission and not just some made-up excuse to separate him from his family. The Hero Commission had given him no information on the mission, but there was a file on the coffee table in the living room waiting for him. Kirishima snorted humorlessly when he saw it, letting his bag fall onto the floor as he took his cell phone out instead. They had taken it away from him on the plane ride over for security purposes, which he was sure meant that they had planted a bug on it or something. He didn't care, though. He wasted no time and called Bakugou, hearing the dialing tone anxiously twice before the phone was picked up on the other end. Hey, are you okay? Bakugou's voice came through, and Kirishima felt himself relax immediately. Hey, sweetheart, I'm fine. Sorry for not giving you updates. Didn't have my phone on me, Kirishima explained, knowing that was enough for Bakugou to know the line wasn't safe. Well, you better hurry up and get back here or I'll drag you back. Bakugou huffed, and Kirishima could hear the smile in his voice. I would like to see you try. Kirishima grinned, earning himself a tisk that made him laugh. Why do I miss you so fucking much already? Bakugou said softly. I don't know, but I think I miss you more, Kirishima said with a sigh before adding, Akio better not have been around to hear you say that. He's sleeping, Bakugou grumbled. I'll be home as soon as I can, Kirishima promised, deciding to let his partner off the hook. I need you to be safe as well. Don't do anything stupid trying to get stuff done quickly, Bakugou warned. I won't, Kirishima assured him. By the way, Mina volunteered to sleep over tonight and texted me to ask why. Told her some of the details. So, Akio is in danger of getting squished to death, Bakugou started. More than likely. Too bad he doesn't have a quirk yet. It would come in handy to keep her from squishing too hard. Kirishima chuckled. That's for sure. I hope his quirk is similar to yours, though. Bakugou admitted offhandedly. What? Why? Your quirk is so much better and flashier. Hey, shut up. It's been how long and you still don't know how fucking awesome your quirk is? Bakugou chastises him. Akio would be lucky to get your quirk. If he does, you have to make sure to show him how awesome it is. Got it? Kirishima stayed quiet for a couple of seconds, feeling his cheeks grow red at the comment. Yeah, I got it. He was finally able to get out. Good, Bakugou huffed. Also, if he gets my quirk, the whole house would be in danger of going up in flames on a daily basis. Kirishima laughed, and he could hear Bakugou chuckling on the other end. Time passes. Bakugou had stayed on the phone with Kirishima for as long as they could. It wasn't unusual for them to call each other during missions, so the HC couldn't prove that they had just recently started dating. Actually, the more he thought about it, it should have been obvious how they were both so in love with each other sooner. But he was just relieved they had gotten to where they were now. He had been able to work his way through some paperwork and some more of the files he needed to look over now that he knew Kirishima had arrived safely. Akio had been fed and bathed even though it was still early in the evening. They were sitting on top of a blanket he had laid down on the floor for Akio to play with some toys. It was the easiest way to keep an eye on him, and it let Riot be near him. The dog had gotten rather attached to Akio recently, while L was still ignoring everyone else who lived in the house, which didn't surprise Bakugou too much. Don't throw the blocks, Bakugou told Akio. Akio turned to look at him as if he didn't understand why Bakugou had said such a thing. His arm already swung back with another block in hand. Bakugou couldn't help but wonder how much trouble this kid was going to give him when he got a bit older. The doorbell rang, making Riot lift his head and bark a couple of times without getting up and startling Akio in the process. It's all right, Gremlin. Your Aunt Mina is here, he said as he picked up Akio and headed over to the front door, telling Riot, who had followed, to move away so he could open it. Ashido stood on the other side with a grin, a backpack thrown over her shoulder. Hey, Blasty, she greeted before turning to Akio with a much softer voice. Hey, little one, how's your dad behaving? Just get in here already, Bakugou said with an eye roll. Always so grumpy, Ashido said with a dramatic sigh, but did as she was told. You're just here because A insisted on it, Bakugou told her, but didn't try to fight her when she took Akio from him. As if I would miss an opportunity to spend time with this one, she said as she smiled at Akio, who was smiling right back at her as he tried to grab her horns. The kid seemed fascinated by them since the first time meeting her. Come on in, I made dinner, Bakugou told her, just glad Akio was doing a lot better with Ashido than he had with Deku. He had been a bit worried that the earlier encounter would have made him a bit more reserved around other people. All right, I get food as well, she exclaimed. I think you're a good influence on him, Ashido told Akio, who was busy babbling at her about something that seemed very important, and she nodded along as he went into detail. You say that as if I didn't feed you and the rest of the idiots through most of our time at UA, Bakugou said with a bit of a smirk. Okay, I'll give you that one. But if we are being honest, it was mostly because Kirishima would tell you to feed us, Ashido pointed out. Even then, you would make it super spicy to the point it was almost impossible for any of us to eat it. Bakugou didn't respond with anything other than a small groan, trying not to laugh. He had no way to deny it. He had always had a soft spot for Kirishima, after all. Instead, he focused on serving 2 plates for them and getting Akio's baby food ready. Thank you, Baku babe, Ashido told him with a smile as he placed the plate in front of her. What did Tape Face say about you spending the night over here anyway? Bakugou asked as he sat down and watched Ashido place Akio in his high chair. Said not to annoy you too much because he wanted to see me alive tomorrow, she said with a shrug. Told him it shouldn't be a problem because you wouldn't dare to kill me in front of Akio. Bakugou chuckled. Yeah, I would make sure he was asleep in the other room first. Ashido looked at him with wide eyes before letting out a laugh. Good one. They ate in mostly silence after that, Bakugou feeding Akio and making sure he wasn't making too big of a mess since he had already had a bath. You are really good at that, Ashido told him. At what? Bakugou asked with a raised eyebrow. Being a dad, Ashido answered with a one-shoulder shrug. Bakugou blinked a couple of times before letting out a quiet thank you. So, are you going to tell me what is going on and why Kirishima insisted on one of us spending the night with you while he's away? He only told me he was on a mission, so can I get more info now? Ashido crossed her arms, waiting for an explanation that Bakugou knew he had to give. He let out a sigh. Let's finish here, and then I'll tell you. Time passes. They finished eating and cleaned up the kitchen together. Ashido kept a light conversation going as she told Bakugou about how Sero and her were planning a trip to Europe together. Bakugou would never admit it, but he was always glad to hear that Ashido and Sero were doing well. It had taken them a while to figure out their relationship, and he was happy for them if he was completely honest. So, what's going on? Ashido asked as they sat on the couch, a Disney movie playing on the TV for Akio's sake, who was busy playing with some toys they had set out for him. The Hero Commission is keeping an eye on us. Got pissed because we took Akio to a hospital the other day that he got sick, Bakugou mumbled. They're trying to punish us for going against their stupid rules. We didn't even break any of them. They just wanted to be on top of us because of Akio's past. Ashido listened quietly as Bakugou kept explaining more about the situation and their plan for Kirishima to get back home sooner, nodding along and making soft hums to let Bakugou know she was still listening. Once Bakugou was done talking, he waited for Ashido to say something, but she didn't, and he could see the gears turning inside her head as if trying to decide how to respond. Just spit it out already, he said, already feeling anxious at the way she kept avoiding his eye. I think it may be a good idea for Kirishima to be away for a bit, she finally said with a bit of a wince as she saw Bakugou recoil from her words. It's just, this has all been an adjustment for both of you. And Kirishima, how do I put this? Was having a hard time with you two living together? That just makes it sound wrong, she said the last part to herself as she ran a hand through her hair as if trying to organize her thoughts. I'm not even sure if I'm allowed to tell any of you this. Eijirou, he's been telling you he doesn't like being here? Bakugou said just above a whisper, his heart cracking slightly at the words. Ashido could see the hurt in his face, and panic took over. No, it's not that. He loves being around you. It's just, I had to put my foot in my mouth. I'm just worried about him, all right? I just can't tell you why, or he's going to kill me. Bakugou looked at her, and down at Akio, who was watching Ashido as she struggled with what she was trying to say. Then it hit him like a Detroit smash. Ashido knew Kirishima had been crushing on him. Kirishima had been having a hard time living with Bakugou, pretending they were together before they had confessed to each other, which they hadn't told any of their friends about yet. Bakugou started laughing, unable to stop, as Ashido stared at him as if he was crazy. "What is so funny?" she asked with a pout.
"Hold up,"
he said as he tried to catch his breath and took out his phone and dialed Kirishima. Ashido raised an eyebrow at him but waited as Bakugou put the phone on speaker. The phone rang only twice before Kirishima answered. "Hey, sweetheart, everything all right?" Ashido blinked a couple of times at the nickname before looking at Bakugou wide-eyed, but the blonde ignored her and answered his partner.
"Everything good, love. Just wanted to let you know that I'm going to tell Raccoon Eyes."
Kirishima was quiet for a beat before answering. "Oh, yeah, that's cool. Tell her I said hi, by the way."
"All right, love you. I'll talk to you later,"
Bakugou said with a fond smile he couldn't hide. "Love you more," Kirishima responded. "Give Akio a kiss for me." Bakugou hung up the phone and turned to look at Ashido with a smug grin. "Why didn't you tell me?" she practically screamed, hitting Bakugou in the arm repeatedly. Bakugou couldn't help but laugh once more.
"We didn't tell anyone. We wanted time to ourselves, but then this BS from the Hero Commission happened,"
Bakugou told her. "I feel betrayed," she told him. "I'm over here all worried about Kirishima having to hide his feelings from you, and you two are saying I love you to each other, and just..." She let out a sound that Bakugou couldn't describe other than pure frustration and annoyance.
"Didn't know you cared that much,"
Bakugou joked, earning himself a glare. "Akio is the only one in this house that I trust," she declared as she took Akio into her arms. "That's what you were trying to tell me earlier, huh?" she asked as she kissed his cheek.
"I can't believe you thought A being away was a good thing,"
Bakugou told her, sounding offended. "You have lost any right to say anything due to hiding this type of thing from me," Ashido told him.
"Fine, but don't tell anyone about it,"
Bakugou warned.
"We want to tell the others together."
"Can I tell Sero, though?" Ashido asked, her best puppy eyes already on. Bakugou let out a groan.
"Fine, but if he spills to anyone, I'm coming after you."
"Fair enough," Ashido said with a nod. "Movie night and you can tell me all the details on how it happened?"
"Sure,"
Bakugou agreed. Ashido let out a cheer, lifting Akio's hands to cheer along with her. Time passes. Ashido and Bakugou were sitting on the couch, clay face masks on as they watched a rom-com they had both seen a million times already. Akio had fallen asleep a while ago, and he was in his nursery, the baby monitor on the coffee table transmitting his even breaths over to them. "So, did Kirishima tell you about the time back in UA that he almost cried because he thought you were going to date that girl from General Studies that asked you out?" Ashido asked before popping some popcorn into her mouth. Bakugou raised an eyebrow at her.
"The one that I rejected right away? He thought I was going to go out with her?"
"Yeah, he was a mess about it until you told us that you rejected her," Ashido said, shaking her head at the redhead antics. "I honestly thought he would confess to you after that."
"I thought he liked you,"
Bakugou confessed.
"You two had been spending a lot of time together during second year, so I just assumed."
"OMG, you keep confessing things to me today, and it feels like I stepped into another reality," Ashido said with a bit of a dramatic flair. "When did you start being so open?" Bakugou rolled his eyes.
"Shut up."
Ashido just chuckled. "I was honestly too busy trying to figure out if I was asexual or demisexual to think about dating back then. Not that I've ever felt that way towards you, Boo. Actually, Kirishima was the person that helped me figure it out, talked to me about it, and said I didn't have to use a label if I didn't want to."
"So that's why you two spent so much time together back then,"
Bakugou realized. "Hanta is the one for me, so you don't have a reason to worry," Ashido assured him. "Besides, you two have a kid together, which, honestly, you guys jump so many steps, it's kind of funny." Bakugou rolled his eyes.
We are aware. Wouldn't have had it any other way, though. Akio is just...
He trailed off, trying to think of the right word to describe his son. He's amazing, Ashido finished for him. I know this isn't what other people would consider ideal when it comes to having a kid, but Akio just fits in so well with the both of you. Hard to imagine him not around anymore. Bakugou nodded.
I'm just glad we found him before something happened.
Ashido didn't say anything to that. They both knew it was the timing of the raid that made it possible for Akio to be with them. So, let me tell you about Kiri's stash of your merch, Ashido started, already changing the topic. Bakugou couldn't help but be thankful, but also glad he could learn about some of the things he never knew about his partner. All right, friends, thank you so much for joining me for these 2 chapters. I hope you enjoyed them, and I hope you come back and join me for the next part, which will be chapters 19 and 20. And then after that one, we will officially be halfway through the fic. That's so exciting. All right, everyone, I hope I will see you in the next chapter.